here we are over the Atlantic, being divided, being put apart by a president who is impatient for having results.
Ukraine is set to present a new peace plan to the United States this evening after Volodymyr Zelensky insisted that Kyiv had no right to give up land to Russia. With the Ukrainian leader holding more meetings in Europe, there's growing pressure from Donald Trump to accept demands from Moscow. The US president has been speaking to Politico's Dasha Burns. Here was his message to Zelensky.
Well, he's going to have to get on the ball and start accepting things. You know, when you're losing, because you're losing, they have to play ball. If they don't read agreements, potential agreements, it's not easy with Russia because Russia has the upper hand. And they always did. They're much bigger. They're much stronger in that sense. They're not doing a good job. Europe is not doing a good job in many ways. They're not doing a good job.
I want to ask
They
you
talk
about
too
that.
much. They're not producing. We're talking about Ukraine. They talk, but they don't produce.
Well, Trezek Garnov was a senior US official for international security affairs at the Department of Defense until last year, now a senior fellow at the Atlantic Council. Trezek, a warm welcome. Thanks for being with us here on Times Radio. There is quite some contrast between the last administration and this one in the approach to supporting Ukraine and the war on its territory by Russia. What do you make of where we are right now? It seems to me that this US brokered peace plan, well, it could be about to become no longer completely derailed.
It's hard to see just how much longer it has sort of viability. I think we'll have to see as some of these things sort of get past their ripened stage for negotiation. So yes, that is a fair question. And as you may have seen over the last few days or so, the administration came out with its broader national security strategy. And it is interesting how it is manifesting itself with Russia. It doesn't create Russia as a primary threat and definitely puts pressure on Europe, just the way Donald Trump just did now, to change and to act vis-a-vis Ukraine and its broader defense.
Look, from your esteemed position, you have a good perspective, a great experience across this. Why is Donald Trump now trying to rush this through? Is it really about getting a Nobel Peace Prize? Is it really just about chalking another war over on his victory board? Or is there another motive? Is there another perspective to this as to why he is, certainly over the last few weeks, so intent on praising Russia and on criticising Ukraine and its president?
I kind of liken the way he approaches these things to momentum trading. I've heard this analogy used before. He goes with where the action is and where he perceives the winner to be. And right now he perceives that to be Russia, and he is pushing in part because of impatience. I do think the President Trump gets very impatient with long, drawn-out situations. Ukraine has taken far longer than he has ever wanted to, and he just wants to turn the page and get on to the next deal, get on to the next situation without having to concern himself with the underlying historic aspects, the underlying logistics of actually making some of this work. And so I think he is impatient and is motivated by not serving as some kind of true go-between between Europe and Russia, but also sort of a distant arbiter who wants to just kind of get a deal, and he wants to get it without any kind of sort of the traditional obligations that he's had to Europe, that the United States has had to Europe in the past. So that's what's motivating. He wants speed and he wants it done, and he's impatient.
Yeah, you mentioned that national security plan that the US produced on Friday, and Russia has no longer been designated as a threat. In this interview with Politico, Trump has said Russia has the upper hand, and they always did. They're much bigger, they're much stronger in that sense. Zelensky's going to have to get on the ball and start accepting things. There is a danger here. I mean, Donald Trump seems to be very, very happy to appease Russia. Is there a world in which that could come back to bite him?
Certainly. I think that it already is biting the United States, to be quite honest. I mean, President Putin has made his singular focus, really from a foreign policy perspective and how he's oriented himself, how he's oriented Russia around the world, is definitely about stopping U.S. influence. And that doesn't just have to do with Ukraine. Ukraine is certainly part of a bigger plan for Putin. It can go to Africa, to the Middle East, certainly to the Arctic, to East Asia. Putin has a plan to block the United States' national security objectives. And I think that's one thing that the national security strategy fails to reckon with, that, for all the grand goals that the president has for peace, there's a huge amount of resistance that's always going to be thrown in the gears by Russia, no matter what President Trump does, and no matter how Ukraine ultimately resolves itself.
Yeah, the big issue is territory in this peace deal. I'm sure that there's more than just that, but the big issue is the fact that Russia is proposing taking all of the Donbass, even though it doesn't currently occupy it. And Ukraine has, well, we are clear, aren't we, that Ukraine, President Zelensky, will just not let that happen. How do you get past that impasse?
That's the most difficult part of this. And I think that President Zelensky understandably cannot give that kind of concession, both domestically, politically, and there is a lot going on politically in Ukraine right now with corruption scandals and other pressures. That is not a possible stipulation for him to accept. So I see 2026, we're going to continue to have these kinds of standoffs with maybe some incremental progress here and there related to Ukraine, but I don't expect a resolution very soon.
What would it take to find a resolution? Is Donald Trump better off staying out of this? Is he more a hindrance than a help?
At times, the United States position has been confusing and caused perturbations in the system. And I think Europe has spent a lot of time responding, trying to, on one hand, mollify Trump with huge delegations of senior leaders over to the United States, and at the same time trying to come up with new solutions. This criticism that Europe isn't doing anything is not a fair one. Europe has done a lot and is continuing to do a lot, but it's not on the timeline. Again, that impatience element that President Trump wants. There's rumors that the United States, that policy officials are already putting 2027 as the timeline for Europe to reach its 5% spending goal, which it promised at the NATO summit. That's a really tough order. Nobody can do that. Sometimes, the United States is going to be part of that solution, and sometimes it's not. And so that has led to what is really, really hard to, kind of a difficult situation for the Europeans to stay on task, really.
Oh, well, President Zelensky is in Rome at the moment. That peace plan is set to go back with Ukraine's amendments to Washington this evening. Teresa Garnov, thanks for being with us, a senior US official for international security affairs at the Department of Defense until last year, now a senior fellow at the Atlantic Council. It is 7:15. President Trump has said that Europe is a decaying group of countries with weak leaders. In a scathing attack against some of the United States' closest allies, Trump took aim at Europe in an extended interview with Politico's Dasha Burns.
I think they're weak, but I also think that they want to be so politically correct. I think they don't know what to do. Europe doesn't know what to do. They don't know what to do on trade either. I mean, I look at a lot of the trade, situation that's going on over there. It's a little bit dangerous, but Europe, they want to be politically correct, and it makes them weak. That's what makes them weak.
Well, Trump also criticised Europe's handling of immigration.
They're coming in from all parts of the world, not just the Middle East. They're coming in from the Congo, tremendous numbers of people coming from the Congo. And even worse, they're coming from prisons of the Congo and many other countries. And for some reason, they want to be politically correct, which actually I think is the opposite of politically correct. But they want to be politically correct, and they don't want to send them back to where they came from.
Well, I'm joined by João Almeida, the former EU ambassador to the United States and the author of The Divorce of Nations. That book sounds incredibly appropriate at the moment, João. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
It's not the first time Donald Trump's had a swipe at Europe. In fact, this very much seems to be the theme of the day over the last week or so. Who are his comments really directed at?
Well, I think we're getting used to Mr. Trump's comments, but still, the latest ones kind of hit a delicate spot on our side, because we appreciate Mr. Trump's interest in Europe. We are also interested in the United States, but we fear that he's talking about an alternate reality. I don't recognize myself in his description of Europe today, be it the European Union member states or the United Kingdom. We're not going extinct. We're not committing suicide. So allies have the right to be worried, to be concerned, to be happy with what the other partner is doing, but they don't have the right to interfere. And what I see recently in some of the statements coming from Washington is a clear wish to interfere in our political debate, in our political process, talking about endorsing parties, which are actually on the extremes of the political spectrum, which are anti-European, some of them even anti-democratic. This is very worrying, coming from our most important ally. And I'm a staunch transatlanticist. I'm sure there are a lot of smiles in Moscow these days.
Yeah, I mean, it does play into Moscow. I think what is more worrying is that the United States has long been an ally of European countries. And here is Donald Trump being an isolationist, trampling through, treading through, stomping all over decades and decades of diplomacy, of compliance, of partnership. Go on.
Particularly in this context, we are not living in, easy times, right? We have a security threat from Mr. Putin. We have an economic and geopolitical, geostrategic threat, I would say, or potential threat from China. And here we are over the Atlantic, being divided, being put apart by a president who is impatient for having results. I mean, diplomacy, international relations are not run on impatience, not because one wants to achieve some kind of a personal objective. No, it takes time. And what we're doing here, let's be very clear, we're talking about the future of European security. If we rush into a solution of the Russian war in Ukraine, which does not guarantee the security of Ukraine, but most importantly for us, if I may, even more important, to guarantee the security of all the 27 member states of the European Union and the United Kingdom, our peoples will not forgive us. So this is extremely difficult. That's why I'm very sad to see Mr. Putin not paying respect to Europe. He has shown more respect for Mr. Putin and for Russia than for Europeans.
How should, sorry to interrupt, how should European leaders respond? Keir Starmer is entertaining the US ambassador to London in Downing Street as we speak, Warren Stevens. His previous sort of tactics have been flattering Donald Trump. Indeed, he did so yesterday. Again, he flattered Donald Trump before Donald Trump came out and doubled down on some of these comments, some of this derision of Europe and its leaders. It starts to look a little bit thinly veiled if people like Keir Starmer, leaders like Starmer, continue to flatter Donald Trump. How should European leaders respond now?
I think we need to be smart, but we need to be very firm. And what happened yesterday in London, what happened overnight or later that day in Brussels, what's happening today around Europe, the coalition of the willing, the firmness, the unity around Ukraine, we need to create leverage. And I hope that we will have a good decision regarding the Russian frozen assets. We need leverage with Mr. Putin. We need a certain degree of flattery. I can live with that. But I think today we need an additional amount of leverage to count and to have the weight that we deserve to have in all this.
What is that leverage, briefly, João?
I think it's the capacity to, first of all, to be united in our principles regarding Ukraine, to tell Mr. Putin that we don't accept the violation of territorial integrity, and that is something that we should not give in on. But also, let me be very frank, I hope that this is also a moment in which Europeans realize that this is a moment to step up on political clout, step up in terms of creating defense capabilities in Europe. So it's a key moment in the recent history of the 21st century. I hope we will not end up in a divorce of nations, as I wrote in my book.
Well, look, thank you for speaking to us, João Almeida.
Thank you very much.
Former EU ambassador to the United States and author of the aforementioned Divorce of Nations.